most advanced recruiting techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with Rick Girard.
We have unlimited time off. Why would anyone not want to join our company with such a progressive time off? Asked Sanjeev, the founder and CEO of a company that I talked to a few weeks ago. I replied quickly, 2 reasons. One, PTO is a perk, not a reason for joining a company. People will join and stay at your company when they believe in your vision and the experience professional growth. And two, your company is a startup. No one's going to believe that you have with your aggressive production cycles that they can take off at a whim and take advantage of this policy whenever they want. I'm Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. We help entrepreneurs and hiring managers win the right hire. We share insights from top-performing rebel entrepreneurs, disruptors, and industry experts like our guest today. We have 2 guests. We have Adam Gordon and Ulises Orozco. They're the co-founders of PTO Genius. With over 30 years of HR tech experience and a focus on employee benefits and leave management, Adam and Ulises are serial entrepreneurs who founded PTO Genius to help companies increase job satisfaction, attract and retain top talent, and lower payroll liability by reimagining what employees can do with time paid off. Which is what makes Adam and Ulises the perfect guest for today's topic. Welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
A pleasure to have you. So today we're going to be discussing the pros and cons of paid time off structures. And we're going to talk about how to implement the right structure for your unique company. Sound like a plan, guys?
Let's do it.
Sounds great.
All right. So I'm going to start out by saying something that you guys are probably going to disagree with, which is paid time off is not a reason why people join your organization. I think it's a icing on the cake kind of scenario, but it's not really what keeps people there. But it is a very good snapshot of how you lead your organization. So how you lead your paid time off program and how you come across and manage it is going to be indicative of your leadership style. Would you guys agree or disagree with that? Come on, fight me on it. Fight me on it.
I would agree. Well, paid time off could also be a reason that somebody might not join a company as well.
Possibly. But I haven't seen it too much. But yeah, I get if you're leaving like a great benefits package to go to something that doesn't really have much, then there may be some issue there, right?
Yeah.
But all right, so let's talk about the challenges today with paid time off. You guys are experts in this. So what are the companies facing as far as challenges go with establishing this particular piece of their framework?
Yeah. So the some of the biggest challenges that we're seeing is that people just simply don't take as much time off with an unlimited PTO policy as they do with a traditional policy. There's been all sorts of articles written about it, all sorts of different reasons, right? I don't feel like I own that time, right? My manager is a little finicky, doesn't really let me go away since I don't have a bank of time. It makes it more difficult to have that conversation. And also the kind of what a lot of people aren't talking about, which is the legal liability that you're trading off the financial liability for when it comes to unlimited paid time off.
All right, let's talk a little bit about that. What is the legal liability?
So the unlimited PTO policy, in the way that most companies are managing it, is creating this unequal use of PTO, where let's say that you and I have similar job functions, right? But we have different managers, and you just so happen to be real friendly with your manager. He lets you go away, no problem. You go away whenever you want. My manager is a little tighter. I don't have such a great relationship with him.
You want to pick that up, Adam? I think we
Sure. So
we'll wait for him to reconnect.
Okay. Yeah. So as Julie was saying, you've got 2 different there he is.
We missed you.
Sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
Where did I lose you? Sorry, guys.
You lost us at we have two different managers. Mine tends to be a little bit more.
Yeah, and mine is strict. Yours isn't. You go away. I don't get a chance to go away as much as you do. All of a sudden, two people with similar job functions don't have access to the same amount of PTO. And guess what? What if I'm a minority? Then that causes all sorts of problems, right? So it creates this kind of unequal use of PTO within the organization if you don't go about managing it the right way.
Okay, and I get that. The fact of the matter is, if it's managed by or run by the hiring manager or your direct manager, you're gonna come into problems with that, right? So what's the solution to that? You have to be self-directed, or you should just be able to set your own paid time off schedule?
Yeah, and that's kind of the challenge, right? Because that doesn't work for all organizations, right? So when we have conversations with clients or potential clients that have these kind of policies, we have kind of a like a real talk with them and say, well, listen, I mean, are you really built for unlimited, right? In practice, it sounds great, but is your culture built for it, right? And
Well,
what that,
so why shouldn't we?
pardon me?
I said, well, Facebook does it, so why shouldn't we?
Well, Facebook's got a pretty great culture. I mean, Facebook didn't start, with an unlimited PTO policy. They moved into one after they, realized that they have the culture to support it, right? People self-manage their PTO time for the most part there, So the company that thrives under an unlimited PTO policy is one that has a culture that can support it, right?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that culture. What culture can support an unlimited PTO?
It comes down to kind of three bedrock fundamentals, right? You have to have trust in your employees and their ability to go about doing the right thing. Their ability to not go away for an unlimited amount of time, which we all know unlimited is just a misnomer. No one can take unlimited time off. You'll get fired. A company that has mutual respect, right? Where employees respect management respects employees, and a company built on accountability, where that I don't have to be over the shoulders of my employees. I know that they're going to get things done, right?
Okay, so if you tie this around your corporate values, right? I think that's really important that you design your policies in and around your corporate values. So those have to be three things that are part of your corporate values. Trust meaning what? No micromanagement. You just trust your people to make their own decisions and manage their work. That's kind of hard for a lot of entrepreneurs to give up that much control. And there's a lot of us entrepreneurs are not great with accountability and not great with, we tend to over manage or micromanage a little bit, right?
Sure.
So get somebody into that mindset where, okay, look, you're going to have to just back away and trust your employees. Or how do you recognize if it's even there?
Yeah, I mean, that can take time. I know for myself, early on in my career, I was really a general leading an army of one when I first got into sales. And then as I jumped into the entrepreneurial world, I realized, hey, as great or as talented as you think you are, Adam, you can't do everything. And, I did experience people that I thought couldn't handle those projects or tasks or do those things, and I had to do it all. But then a beautiful thing happened. I ended up meeting some people along the way in my professional career that showed me that, hey, you're not the only person that can do these things, that can be relied upon, you can trust. And over time, I learned to be able to, let the reins out a little bit. And once you start finding, I'm sure you know this, Rick, right? Once you start finding people that you can rely on, that you can trust, that can do those things with you, it's a beautiful thing, and that you can become a symphony and all really work together and all tackling a lot of things at once.
My challenge, I had the same problem that you had, right? Especially if you're a high performing individual and all of a sudden now you're managing people.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't trust myself. So it was hard to trust other people. So you have to trust yourself first, right?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So the mutual respect thing, let's talk about that. What does that mean in that corporate environment? What is this mutual respect concept, and how does that come into play for building out unlimited PTO? or even a PTO program?
Yeah. So it all starts with the hiring process, where a lot of things begin, right? And respecting your employees enough to demonstrate to them that you trust them in order to accomplish the things you want to accomplish, right? Part of respect is or at least the way that we've seen it and are starting, to define it, is around the ability for the organization to empower the employee to be able to go about and do things, right? So you're respecting the autonomy that I have in order to complete the tasks that I have at hand, right? And that comes from the top, from the founder.
Trust piece, for sure.
Pardon me?
That's hand in hand with trust, right? You have to trust them to give mutual respect.
Yeah. And trust is kind of one of those fundamental things when you're talking about high functioning teams, right? It has to start with vulnerability, then builds trust, and then that creates the ability for people to, have healthy conflict, which leads to resolution and buy-in and eventually results. So it all kind of trickles down, or trickles up, I should say, into not just kind of policy making, but just kind of general management.
That's such a great point. All right, you're listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. I'm Rick Girard, your host. And for our podcast listeners, we're going to take a quick educational moment from our sponsors. Hey, check out stridesearch.com. There you'll find additional resources to help you land great hires. Our guests today are Adam Gordon and Ulises Orozco. They are the co-founders of PTO Genius, and we're talking about paid time off. Actually, we're talking about what I like to call the pretend time off. All right, so we just talked a little bit about why it's important to your company to establish a PTO policy that's resonant with who your company is. But now we're going to talk a little bit about how to do it. So when you look at your company values, I think I mentioned earlier, it's really important that you align your PTO policy with your values. Now, what if your values are not an environment that's trust, mutual respect, and accountability? It's a high pressure sales environment where you got to come in and prove yourself. Is this going to be something that's going to work for that sort of environment?
It's not.
Yeah.
Do you want to expand on that, Adam?
No, it's not. I mean, if you have to, the philosophy that I have, right, and everyone can have a different opinion, is I believe that, and I learned this from experience. I learned that if you have to, for example, you mentioned like looking over someone's shoulder, micromanaging them. I learned that if I have to do that, it's not my fault, it's theirs, because I made a mistake in the hiring process.
Okay.
So, starting out with the right people in the organization is definitely the foundation to be able to build upon that, with looking at potentially doing an unlimited PTO policy. All right. Yeah. If you don't have the right people, it's like trying to build a house on unstable foundation, right?
So very true. So very true. And that's why it's really important that you hire against your corporate values, first and foremost. Because, if your environment is a bunch of backstabbing guys who win at any cost, it's all about making money, that's fine that that's your environment. Stick with it. Don't hire really nice collaborative people and expect they're going to be, successful there, and vice versa.
Yeah.
All right.
The truth is that if you don't have the right culture, right, it's just the unlimited policy just isn't for you, and that should be okay. If it's a high pressure sales, like environment, then people probably won't even take time off in an unlimited policy. So what's the benefit of that employee benefit? Zero. So
yeah, I would think that those people tend to be a lot more transactional too. So a traditional paid time off policy, knowing that if I leave, I get paid out on that, that's gonna be a lot more alluring, or it's gonna keep them there longer than a paid time off policy. Now, we didn't mention this, but like the when you said the liability side, the downside to a paid time off policy or an unlimited policy is that at the end of the process, if I end my contract with your company, what do I have to do as the company? Do I have to pay them out on that time that they didn't take?
On the unlimited policy or on the traditional policy?
The unlimited policy. Traditionally,
No.
you have to pay them for their time they accrued.
No, so that's one of the pros of that sort of a policy. You're not accruing this PTO liability across time, which is why it tends to be real good for smaller businesses or businesses that just don't want to deal with the hassle. The argument is that if you don't have the proper foundation to properly manage that sort of a policy, you're kind of trading off the financial liability for potential legal liability. And if your company's small, you may not be able to, to absorb a lawsuit, right, or some sort of a legal claim.
No, you don't want that at all. All right, you mentioned foundation. Let's delve into that. So what is the foundation that I need as a company in order for me to thrive in? Let's start with the unlimited PTO. Like, what do I need foundationally? I know you said those aspects, but how do I build it out?
So, I mean, you really have to ask yourself, first and foremost, is my company really built for it, right? And that means, like, do we even look at paid time off as the right way, as a mechanism to leave work and unplug, right? The next thing I would do is just not call it unlimited, because that's wrong. There's no such thing.
What do you call it?
I would call it a self-directed plan, right? Which is really what it should be, right? The ability for the employee to self-direct when they take off. And then, though, I would define kind of bumpers, right, or parameters or non-starters to that policy, right? Like, what are the things that I want to make sure the employees know so that, there's no conflict. If I'm a CPA firm, sorry guys, during tax season, you just can't take away, right?
Now, I feel like it's lazy on part of a lot of companies where essentially they have this unlimited PTO program, but they don't have it documented out, right? Like, so your bumpers that you're putting in place, those are really smart. So what are those bumpers? What do they look like?
Yeah. So it ranges everything from what the expectation is of how much time they can actually get away, what the expectations are on the minimum amount of time that they should get away, right? If your culture is such that you want to encourage people to get away, you should put that in writing. Hey, we encourage people to recharge for at least a week or at least 2 weeks a year. Anything above and beyond that, great, And
it has to be documented.
Pardon me?
And it has to be documented.
It has to be documented. If not, you're not establishing that philosophy, right? Because it's one thing for someone to tell you that, but if it's in writing, it just solidifies that point that much more.
Yeah, that can be one of the downsides of unlimited PTO is expectations aren't clear, right? So, Uli, to your point, is making sure that people understand, assuming you have the foundation of the culture there, right? Then people understanding, okay, when can I take this PTO or when can I take this time off? There's a SHRM survey recently done that showed that the average traditional PTO policy, people took 15 days off. The average unlimited PTO policy, the person took 13 days off. So it's not to say that a unlimited policy can't work. Like Yuli said, Rick, for your audience, people that are in HR, entrepreneurs, it could be a great way to get the business started. And then you grow from there, but it's making sure that there's clear expectations and people understand what's expected of them as the company grows. And that comes down from leadership, because if I'm reporting to my manager and my manager never really takes time off, I'm probably not going to feel so good about either requesting to be out or to go do that time for fear of potentially affecting my job security. So it really comes from the top down and really working on that culture to push that message out there.
So when you put these bumpers in place, what you do is you lay out, hey, here's our policy. So you have something like, hey, look at, I'm going to, you have to give 2 weeks notice before, and then transfer all that work over to, your cohort, or make sure that you're covered and there's plenty of notice, but it can't be denied or approved by the hiring manager, right? It just, I'm taking this time off and go.
Yeah, that's how it works best. If there's no mechanism in place, right, other than just the accountability of it. And this is kind of the part in the policy that a lot of folks miss, which is the kind of tracking of it in an unlimited policy transitions from reporting to someone and saying why you're going away, someone passed away, or I need to, whatever it is, to now just keeping your team in the loop so that there's no loss of productivity within the organization. So things like company calendars, right? Company PTO calendars that just say, okay, well, Rick is out the third week of November. All right. So
put a policy in place that says, okay, you make sure that you can transition that work off so that you don't lose any customers.
exactly. Hugely important.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the other
problems that you have.
Right. And then the other part of that, Rick, is not to digress, is when someone is going to be out, making sure that the procedures are also set up to make sure that before they go out, everything is handed off or forwarded. And then when they come back, they're in an environment where they can step in back into the cockpit of work and succeed, right? You don't want to take some beautiful vacation to Hawaii, come back a week later, and you've got, welcome to work. You have 487 emails to pour through and catching up on projects. So if you can have a culture set up to where people can truly take those things away from you, handle them while you're gone, come back to a zero inbox environment. People give you the status updates of where they're at, projects pass the baton to you, and you're in there ready to go. You've now elongated the effects of your time off, and that's now going to contribute to your productivity and your happiness and to the culture in the organization.
That's a great point. All right. So if I need to build a PTO policy for my organization, right? Walk me through how I do it. Now, honestly, it doesn't take very much time to sit down and think this stuff out and document it, right? How much time does it take to do this from your experience?
Maybe 30 minutes, an hour. I mean, at most.
So there's no reason as an entrepreneur you shouldn't be doing it. Period.
No.
Okay.
No reason. And basically, the anatomy is don't call it unlimited because it sets a precedent, right? You don't want to set the wrong precedent. So call it self-directed or call it something else that implies that people have the autonomy and the trust from the organization to be able to manage their own time. Second thing, put it on paper, right? So this is where you define those non-starters, those bumpers, those parameters that you want to make sure that the employee follows, right?
Do you want to limit the unlimited? I mean, this self-directed time off? Because what happens if you get somebody who comes in and goes on leave for 2 months?
Yeah, no, you want to, and that ties into the whole calling it unlimited. If someone leaves for 2 months, you're going to get fired. I'm sorry, there is no such thing as unlimited. So just
there's that legal liability because you called it unlimited. So you hired me. You said I had unlimited. I mean, there's an argument there to where you can get sued.
Exactly.
Don't put yourself there.
Yeah, so don't put yourself there. Don't get sued. You're too busy trying to run your company. Stop trying to defend your company against, the fact that you named something incorrectly or the fact that your one manager's tougher than the other. Just call it what it is, self-directed, and let people do their thing. Document it. Put your non-starters. Put your things that are just, listen, you can't go away for 2 weeks solid, 2 months solid. It's just not going to happen. Put all those things in there, right?
That's all the leave of absence.
Exactly. And then actually encourage time off in your policy, right? So write that down. And then the final piece, and this is where the success can really come in, is those handoff mechanisms, right? Put that in your policy too. We expect you 8 days before you go away to touch base with clients, to create a team of people to hand off work to, and then have those meetings whenever you need to have them. And then when you come back, have a debrief with those people. If you do that and you put that in writing, it makes not just handoffs that much more efficient, but it also makes your employee that much happier. Because when they come back, they feel like, oh, I'm not landing in those 46 emails, that Adam said, or 246 emails that Adam said.
You know what I like? I like that point you just brought up, the proactive handoffs, right? Letting your customers know maybe a week before, rather than, there's nothing more frustrating sometimes than sending an email and getting that response back that says, oh, I'm on vacation, for any reason, contact this person. If they already know that that's going to happen, then again, that just makes your customer experience that much better.
Absolutely.
That's
All
right.
Well, shoot, guys, we're getting pretty close on time. What would be 2 or 3 key takeaways that you could give the audience so they can plug into their business today?
Say first is, really think about the kind of PTO policy that you want to offer. It doesn't mean you have to stick with that, but really think about what is important to you as the company of a culture, and then from there build a policy around that. That's one.
Yeah. And proactive handoffs, like we talked about, those are hugely important, not just, again, to encourage people to get away, but to really allow them to feel regenerated and refreshed when they come back. Because like we talked about at the top of the hour, PTO has turned into pretend time off, right? And nobody wants that. And part of that is the fact that we're checking out of work, quote unquote, and then we're still getting buzzed as we're away. And when we're away, we should be away. So when we come back.
That is so true. Like,
Yeah.
I just had a vacation last week for a couple of days, and I was on my phone constantly. But we're entrepreneurs. We kind of have to accept that.
Yeah, it's different when you're the entrepreneur, but you want your employees to be able to unplug so they can come back and bring their best selves to the organization.
That is so very true. And with that, we're just about out of time for today's show. Adam and Ulises, thanks so much for your time investment today, and I want to welcome you guys to the Higher Power Radio community. Now, what would be the best way in which members of our community can reach you?
They can hit up our website, which is ptogenius.com. If they want to email us, they can do it hello@ptogenius.com. And they can also find both of us on LinkedIn and Twitter. You can search Adam P. Gordon or Ulises I. Orozco, Orozco.
Perfect. All right. I want to thank our listening audience for tuning in to this week's episode of Higher Power. A quick thanks to our team, Christopher Decker, Andrea Ballin, and Ayla Gerard. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. We love your feedback. After all, the show's about you. Join the Higher Power Radio community at Higher, H-I-R-E, Power, P-O-W-E-R, Radio, R-A-D-I-O.com. Or you can drop me an email at rick@stridesearch.com with any suggestions. Tune in next week. Our guest is going to be Jay Prasad. He is the Chief Strategy Officer for LiveRamp TV. I'm your host, Rick Gerard, and you've been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power Radio. Catch our LinkedIn Live show every Tuesday at noon, or download the podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate you joining us on Higher Power Radio with your guide to recruitment success, Rick Gerard.
Great job, guys.
Thanks, Rick.
Man,
Have fun.
yeah, it's